this leads us to the previous recordings have led us to a very interesting problematic between and among Cartesian followers. Allow me to share my whiteboard to demonstrate that. So what is the question or what is the issue that has been raised up recently? First, that we said that God exists and is no deceiver. No? And then based on that claim, we were able to arrive at the understanding that I am justified in drawing uh, ontic conclusions from my clear and distinct ideas. And many say that the problem with this one is that this is actually a vicious circle. So to a certain extent, we were able to arrive at the existence of God because of my clear and distinct ideas. But also Descartes is saying that I can only arrive at clear and distinct ideas because God exists. It looked like a chicken and egg thing, no? And therefore, of the argument that Descartes was merely going on circles. But is Descartes really going on circles? Allow me to explain this one to you again. The quest for certainty leads Descartes to attempt to prove that God exists and is no deceiver. He hopes in this way to justify clear and distinct perceptions as truthful representations of external reality. Whether and in what sense Descartes' proof for the existence of God also presupposes the prior justification of clear and distinct ideas is the problem of the Cartesian circle. It's a vicious circle. That's what they always say. It has appeared to many critics, even in Descartes' own day, that the argument in Meditation 3, which we just finished in the previous page, is circular. The trouble is that Descartes' proof for the existence of God seems to assume the prior justification of his clear and distinct ideas of God. That God exists and is no deceiver is supposed to justify clear and distinct ideas. The proof that there exists a perfectly veracious God is itself not epistemically certain unless its assumptions are beyond doubt, beyond the demon's reach. For this, it seems it must already be known with epistemic certainty that God exists and is no deceiver. In other words, Descartes seems to assume what he needs to prove in demonstrating that clear and distinct perceptions are truthful because God exists and is no deceiver. The objection is that Descartes must know the truth of key propositions with epistemic certainty prior to establishing the grounds for epistemic certainty of any such beliefs. These include the cogito sum, by which his own existence as an essentially thinking thing survives the evil demon hypothesis. The assumption that the cause of any idea must have at least as much formal reality as the idea has objective reality, that there is no satisfactory alternative explanation for the cause of his clear and distinct idea of God, and that deception is the sign of a defect rather than of perfection or strength. Descartes must also know with epistemic certainty that all of the connecting steps of inference in his proof for the existence of a veracious God are logically valid unless or until Descartes knows beyond the shadow of a doubt that he has not been so constituted or interfered with in his thinking by an evil demon in such a way that even his clear and distinct ideas misrepresent the truth, he cannot, according to his own ground rules, be epistemically certain about any of the assumptions by which he tries to prove that God exists and is no deceiver. It nevertheless appears that Descartes cannot know that these things are true with epistemic certainty unless or until he has first proven that a veracious God exists and that God divinely constitutes him as an essentially thinking thing. The circularity objection appears therefore in the claim that Descartes must appeal to his conclusion in order to uphold the truth that God exists and is no deceiver. The Cartesian circle, in its simplest terms, has the form of this one that I have just drawn for you. The Cartesian circle has also been interpreted as a symptom of a deeper difficulty that plagues knowledge theory or epistemology. This is known as the problem of the criterion. Diallelus or will. Diallelus, Diallelus. There is a circle in the justification of particular beliefs on the basis of whether or not they fall under sound epistemic principles. Whether the soundness of epistemic principles depend on whether or not they support all or only justified beliefs. The Cartesian circle seems to be a special instance of the diallelus. Here, the particular belief to be justified are the beliefs that God exists and is no deceiver, and the epistemic principles whose soundness is at issue is that clear and distinct ideas are truthful. Many solutions to the Cartesian circles have been proposed already, but the objection, once clearly expressed, seems so obvious that some commentators have doubted whether a thinker as astute as Descartes could have blatantly begged what is perhaps the central question of his epistemic enterprise. Other critics find no particular difficulty in the assumption that Descartes, like any other thinker, might be capable even of the most whopping logical howler. They interpret the circle as an instructive mistake that could only occur in the effort to develop a subtle and sophisticated philosophy, or of the philosophical risks Descartes is willing to take in exploring the limits of knowledge. It is perhaps harder for some defender to believe that Descartes could have continued to uphold the framework of his theory after the circularity had been called to his attention twice in the objection and replies, and later again in his conversation with Burman. In the latter correspondence, Burman writes, "It seems there is a circle, for in the third meditation, the author uses axioms to prove the existence of God, even though he is not certain yet of not being deceived about these." Descartes Correspondence, 16 of April, 1648. The circularity objection supports the claim that Descartes, through an unnoticed distinction, does not actually involve himself in the Cartesian circle, or that there is a solution available by which he can escape. The challenge, since his official answer is often judged unsatisfactory, or at least in need of a better explanation, is to discover the solution Descartes might have had in mind, or that might be offered on his behalf consistently within the main outlines of his reform of first philosophy. Some commentators have tried to defend Descartes' reasoning against the circularity objection by insisting that God's guarantee of the veracity of clear and distinct ideas is not needed for the proof of God's existence, while Descartes is carefully attending to the proof. Afterward, when the proof is completed and the conclusion is proved, God's existence and perfect veracity uphold the truthful representations of all previous and clear and distinct perceptions, thereby exiting the circle. Such a solution to the Cartesian circle is doubtful for several reasons. To topple the edifice of Aristotelian science presumably calls for more than doubt about the truth of demonstrations whose conclusions were perfectly certain when attended to, but may afterwards have become hazy. It would be extraordinary to bring God into epistemology merely in order to uphold the conclusion of clearly and distinctly perceived demonstrations only later when the demonstrations themselves are no longer fully present to mind. Nor, as several critics have rightly observed, is the existence and veracity of God sufficient to overcome a faulty memory if, say, Descartes were clearly and distinctly to misremember the conclusion of a geometrical proof he had once correctly demonstrated while attending more closely to the assumptions and inferences he makes. In matters such as these, God's existence and veracity doesn't seem to help. What the atheist claims to know in any area can be overturned by the kinds of doubts Descartes raises concerning the possibility of an evil demon. Only God is powerful enough to defeat the evil demon. If God exists and is no deceiver, then clear and distinct perceptions take on the same demon-proof epistemic certainty that otherwise thought to belong only to knowledge of the simplest necessary truths in elementary mathematics. The possibility of extending epistemic certainty to all Cartesian science is limited by the role of free will judgment in interpreting data, drawing less than epistemically certain conclusions about the nature of reality from the epistemically certain content of clear and distinct perceptions, and constructing explanatory and predictive theories from the infallible raw evidence of perception. It is misjudgment rather than perception that Descartes believes leads to error in the sciences. If the solution to the Cartesian circle is to prove God's existence and veracity with something less than epistemic certainty in order to uphold the epistemic certainty of clear and distinct ideas for knowledge as science, then at best, at the end of the proof, Descartes still does not know with epistemic certainty what a veracious God exists. If he does not know with epistemic certainty that God exists and is no deceiver, then he remains subject to the possibility of the evil demon's doubt-inducing deceptions, and the whole system of knowledge is trying to construct cannot attain epistemic certainty because its foundations in that case are less than epistemically certain. The objection undermines any effort to avoid the Cartesian circle by drawing inferences that step up the epistemic status of beliefs from less than epistemically certainty in the proof of God's existence to full epistemic certainty. If we know with less than epistemic certainty that God exists and is no deceiver, then we cannot know with epistemic certainty that clear and distinct ideas are truthful representations of reality. The proposal to advance from beliefs with less than epistemic certainty to beliefs with epistemic certainty commits the fallacy of trying to derive stronger from weaker justification. Sounded like Socrates, right? If Descartes' proof does not begin with epistemic certainty, it cannot produce it on pain of violating an epistemic version of the principle that is ex nihilo nihil fit. The demon, for all that Descartes knows with certainty as the first stages of his proof, could mislead the thinker about the cogito sum, the metaphysical maxim that the source of any idea must have at least as much formal reality as the idea has objective reality. The principle that God's nature is incompatible with deceit, the refutation of alternative explanations of the source or cause of his clear and distinct idea of God, and the soundness of any of the inferences by which Descartes goes from step to step in the proof is something worth thinking and justifying about. Question. I want you to go to the library after this video and to look for models that will eventually explain whether Descartes was in fact circular. Was Descartes circular? Review Meditations 3 again. And in a Jamboard, which I am going to put there, Jamboard, the class should lay out for me the argument of Descartes to show to me whether he was guilty of vicious of the Cartesian circle or not. I will put the Jamboard link below, but before you move to the Jamboard link to the next page after this one, please answer first. Do you think Descartes was guilty of the Cartesian circle or not? And then in the Jamboard, as a class, think together as a community, demonstrate to me that Descartes is guilty or not guilty of the Cartesian circle. And then I will explain where I stand on this matter in a recording, not for next week. No, not for next week. In a recording next week. Thank you.